Welcome to Future Stories. Today we're going to be talking about some awesome mission stories from my wonderful guest, Sumner.
Hey, thank you for having me. Seriously, I'm super excited to do this.
Oh, definitely. I'm excited to hear some stories. I love doing this because I'm kind of a junkie for spiritual stories, and I feel like a big black hole, and I just soak in all these stories.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Well, I got a lot.
Oh, perfect. Great. You can tell as many or as few as you'd like. So if you want to start off with one of your favorite stories.
Oh my goodness. It's like picking a favorite child. So when you gave that to prep, the first person I thought of was this man named Hermano, and Hermano Montino, and he lives in Valencia, Philippines, which is on the island of Negros Oriental. So that was my last area where I spent 6 months. And he was just one of the kindest humans that I've ever met. They immediately became like family, your family on the other side of the world. And I just remember meeting his wife first. We were visiting her house because she was less active, and she started taking the lessons. We would teach people the lessons again. And her husband wasn't a member, but slowly, every time we came, sat a little closer to us each
Sure.
time. And it started, he was literally outside, just hanging out outside, and wanted nothing to do with us, and then came in a little closer until he was in the lessons and taking the lessons. And so his wife, Lorna, had started coming back to church. He was interested, so he started coming back to church. He was 63 or something. And so well into his life and well into his habits and his job and everything. And so he was a tricycle driver. That's a type of transportation in the Philippines where people, they weld on a sidecar to a motorcycle.
Okay.
And so they can have someone sit on the back, they can have somebody sit, a couple people sit in the sidecar. But in that culture of drivers, it's just very common to drink and smoke. And so that was a really, really big part for him to let go. But he just gave it up. And the more that he learned, the more that he wanted to, follow the gospel. And I just remember some of the women in the neighborhood coming up to us because they knew Hermano. They knew him. Their husbands work with him, and they're like, elders, can you get my husband to stop smoking and drinking? And the word spread around town that Hermano had stopped drinking, and that was a big deal, or he had stopped smoking, and everyone was super hyped about that. I just remember that time it just really captured the essence of my mission, the humility of the Filipino people, their kindness, their humor, they are the funniest couple. I just remember we were always just laughing so hard every time we went to visit them. And through this journey of of Lorna coming back to church and Hermano joining the church, they went through so many trials. They so many things happened to them, and their neighbors were it's because you're going back to the Mormon church, and this is all happening because you're letting those elders in your house, and it's bad luck. And and through it all, they stayed so strong, and they just kept going. And I remember their power went out once, and they couldn't afford the electricity, and so they went a really long time without electricity. But I remember walking up to their house. This was way in the country, and they lived really far from the center of town. And so it was very quiet. It was very dark. And we walked up to their house, and we could see through their front window. Their windows are just openings in the cinder block, And we looked in, and I saw Lorna and Hermano by the candlelight reading their scriptures next to a gospel doctrine book. And they were just feasting on the gospel, they couldn't get enough, and when there was every excuse to slow down or stop or give up, they just kept going. And it was just one of the best experiences just knowing that family is like one of the best experiences of my mission and life, you know. So I love them to death. It's hard to keep in touch with them because they're so like far in the country, but every now and then somebody from the ward will be on Facebook and tell me about them, and I miss them, you know. They're like my family for real. So that's probably one of my favorite experiences, because they captured the whole Filipino mission experience so well, you know.
I think I got so excited to hear your stories. I forgot to ask you to give a quick introduction to just like where you served, what you spoke.
Yes, yeah. I served in Cebu, Philippines, and I spoke Cebuano.
Cebuano.
Yeah,
that sounds
Cebuano.
so cool.
Yep. And Cebuano is a very interesting language that's kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different languages, and it kind of shifts from island to island. So there were initially 3 islands within my mission, and each one kind of had a different way, a different approach to Cebuano, and the pronunciations would shift, and they'd use different words depending on which island you were on.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was crazy.
And then going back to stories, what would you say is one of your funniest or funny to you?
Oh my goodness. That one was hard to pick because Filipinos are known for being funny. Like that's just like a part of their culture, like just an innate part of it. I felt like I was laughing every day, and everyone like loved to joke. They loved word plays. You know, like every time I introduced myself, I'd be like, "Ako di si Elder Mahaffey," and they were like, "Mahaffey, because it sounds like happy. And they're like, "Oh, you're really happy. I bet you're so happy." And everyone's like howling and like slapping their knees and like slapping each other. And so that was like every day. Everyone's always laughing. I think though, I can't talk about funny without, you know, talking about my language learning mess ups, you know, like, and oh man, when I first got there, I messed up so much, you know, and probably even till the last day that I was there. But there's a lot of words that sound the same that mean very, very different things. And I think the best one was, I had just gotten a haircut, and so everyone was like, "Elder," I showed up to somebody's house. They're like, "Elder, you look different. What happened? Or you lost weight or something?" And I was trying to tell them like, "Oh no, I just got a haircut." I was like, I was trying to say, "Nagpatupi ako," is like I just got a haircut, but I said "Nagpatuli ko," which means I just got circumcised. And everyone just like their eyes just went wide and they just burst out laughing. And after that, I never, you know, forgot about it, because they they reminded me, you know, like how was your, because I did this with my fingers too. I did like the snipping motion. They're like, "Oh, how was your circumcision?" But yeah, I had so many language mess ups. That's just a part of, you know,
the experience.
The language. Yeah.
Yes.
Another one I thought of was in one area in the city, Mabolo. The city comes with its own like crazy stuff, you know, like its own life and culture, just as the countryside does, you know. You get a whole different experience serving city versus mountain country area. And I remember walking home one night. We were trying to get home before curfew, and we heard this sound coming from the canals, which is like their sewers, but their sewers are like open, like slots in the ground, with like blocks of concrete to cover it. And sometimes the concrete would break, and so there'd be like little openings. And we heard this sound coming, and I like ran over to the sewer, and I hear like this animal down there, and I was like, I think there's a cat down there or something. And my companion's like, are you gonna get it? And I was like, I have to, like it's drowning or something. And so I like we were short sleeve, but I just like stuck my hand down into the, the sewer, and I like felt around, and I had him like shine his little Nokia flashlight, and I felt something. I picked it up, and it was like a kitten. It was like a cat that was living, that was like crying, and so I was like, well, we have to take it home now, and like obviously that's like just against all the rules to have any pets or anything. But
the white handbook, yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, I can't just like Jesus would want me to do this, you know. I can't just leave it here. So we like took it home and bathed it, and like nursed it back to health, and then it was like feeling strong, and it was like really, really young. But eventually it was like we got it food, like canned food and everything, and then we had this little setup right on our balcony that it could just like hang out all day. But we eventually gave it to one of our investigators. I was like, do you guys want a cat? And we like took it in a box to one of our investigators one day, and time went by. I got transferred out, and then I got transferred back to the city and got to go back and visit she became a member, so I went back and visited her, and I was like, hey, how's the cat? And she was like, good, we named it after you guys. Like we named it after you and your companion. My companion was Warner, so Warner and Mahaffey, the cat's name was Warfy. And she was like, but turns out it got pregnant one day, and it's a girl cat, and and there's like 10 cats running around that are named after me and my companion. And just crazy stuff, you know. Had to save the cats.
Yeah, you're brave to put your hand down in that sewer. I don't think I could have done that.
I know. It's nasty to think about.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Before I go to the next section, you don't have any other funny ones? I want to make sure, like, I'm loving them so far. But...
Well, like, just generally, there are so many things that are funny to me about just mannerisms. Like, when somebody doesn't understand something that you said, they just open their mouth, and they leave their mouth open until you repeat it.
Sure.
And that, I mean, like, I've never even heard of that or anything close to that. So it kind of like, it took me back when I first got there. I was like, why are all these people opening their mouths at me? And then they point with their lips. If you're asking a question, they point with their lips, or they say yes by just raising their eyebrows. And and that was just kind of confusing. You know, there's a learning curve there with all the different facial expressions. And another thing that I think is so funny, I wrote home to my family and said, the only thing I could compare it to was, this reminds me of the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like, Filipinos have a remedy for everything. Some of them are like a cure-all. Like, they think a massage will cure everything. Like, if somebody just like massages your hands or your body, somebody could like literally be on their deathbed. I don't mean to laugh at that, but they just say like, give him a massage. You know, he's good. Give him a massage. Or like they'll just rip off leaves from outside, and they're like, yep, this one's good for diabetes, or like this one's good for, you know, dengue fever. And I just thought that was hilarious, you know, that they just it reminds me of the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, because he thinks that Windex, you know, cures everything, no matter what it is. And you know what, I can't deny that, you know, that it doesn't work. Sometimes it really does work, and I don't know if it's like a mental thing or if like they just figured it out, you know, all these different remedies. I loved it. I loved all that stuff.
Oh, I'm loving it. Next section would be a wild story.
Wild story. Okay, well, speaking of dengue, I got dengue in like my first month being in the Philippines, which is like the worst the worst sickness that, you know. It was awful. I wasn't prepared for it mentally, you know. I had no idea that was a thing. I just knew when they got there, they told us, like, you know, make sure you wear mosquito repellent and make sure your house is clean and stuff. Our house was not clean, and there were lots of mosquitoes, lots of standing water, and I got dengue. And I didn't tell anybody. Like, I didn't tell the mission nurse or my mission president or anything, because I didn't want to be like, I'm that brand new missionary. I didn't want to complain about anything, you know? So I kind of just like laid there for like 4 days and felt like I was gonna die for 4 days before I finally was like, okay, like something's really, really wrong. We finally told the nurse, and she was like, well, it seems like you're on the, like, these things last 7 days. Seems like you're on the downside of it. So maybe just wait it out. So I know usually people go to the hospital for that fever, but I just laid literally in one spot for like 7 days. I lost like 25 pounds because I couldn't eat or drink anything. It was so painful. Yeah, that was bad. That was like a near death experience for me. So I feel like that's wild in itself, just to like go through that. But I got through it, and like a week later I was, you know, eating right and walking again. So, but I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It was awful. Other crazy things, I ate bat, like cave bat. I ate horse and balut, a lot of balut. Do you know what balut is? It's like this fertilized duck egg. It's like a duck fetus. And
No.
you have to look it up because it's nasty. Like the image of it.
It sounds gross.
And I, in my first area, it was gross at first. It's like an acquired taste, but then like you start convincing yourself that like, this just it's not bad. It's kind of like a boiled egg, you know, with a beak and wings and feathers and bones and stuff. So that was crazy. I ate a lot of crazy stuff. Yeah, fish heads, very common, you know. That wasn't like that. I'm not doing it justice. Like the food in the Philippines, the food in the Philippines is actually really good. I'm just telling you, like the craziest stuff that I was eating. People eat like lizards over there, and yeah, crazy stuff. If I'm thinking about an experience though, this one comes to mind where I was serving in Valencia, and we were just taking a new route up the mountain, trying to contact as many people as we could, you know, introduce ourselves, meet new people. And we went to this one house we had never gone to. It was so far from town center. And this American man comes out. And it's so trippy to see foreigners in the Philippines, because you get used to the people you're serving, and you know exactly how to talk to them, and you know like their way of speaking. And so it's kind of jarring to see an American in the jungle in the Philippines, you know. So we see him outside. We're like, hey, I forget how to speak English. I'm like, how are you doing? And I, you know, it feels really awkward. Anyway, he's like, hey, elders, come on inside. And I was like, oh, he's like a member. That's crazy. I've never seen him before. So we come inside, and he's like being really nice and small talk and everything, but then I'm like, wait, so you're a member? How come we never see you at church? And then he just switched and became so hostile towards us. And that's when, you know, we found out like, oh, he's just like an estranged member. He's like an apostate, you know, just very, very strongly against the church. And so my stomach sinks as he starts going off, and he's like saying the worst things about Joseph Smith, and he's like, it was just like so conniving, you know, like he like lured us in to insult us. And he's like this old man, you know, attacking these 19-year-old kids, and he's like, you're so stupid, you're so dumb, what are you doing with your life? And it kind of like took me out of the routine of, you know, like, oh, this is what we do, and da-da-da. It was like he put me up against a wall and was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? You're wasting your life, you know? And he just like challenged everything that I had done for the last couple of years with my life. And I was really shaken. I started crying like on the spot in front of him, and I was like, trying to tell him like, no, like I know this is true. Like I know what I'm doing is right. And he just kept cutting me off and just kept like, he like spit at our feet, and I was like, just saw like, it was a full body sob, like I couldn't think straight. I was really, really taken off guard, and he kicked us out. He's like, never ever come around here again. I never want to see your face again. And it like really shook me. And so we left, and I was, I had to catch my breath because it just really threw me off. My companion was trying to calm me down, and I was like saying a prayer in my head, like, I don't know what just happened. All of a sudden, I'm like sincerely questioning, what is this? What am I doing? Why am I here? And I was like asking Heavenly Father for help. Like, I need to get through this moment right now. And I don't know what's going on. So then I go and I sit in this, there's like these huts all over the place that people can they're like park benches, but they're like full hut. And they're all over the Philippines. And I go sit in this hut in the middle of this field, trying to like, recoup. And all of a sudden, we're next to this bamboo forest, and like 3 men come out of the forest, like from different directions. Like they weren't together, and they all come up to us, which isn't common for Filipinos to do. It's just not very culturally, like if they see an American, they're like, from my experience, they were more likely to just, I don't want to like try to speak English right now, because they just assume that we don't know the language. So it was like crazy. They came up to us, like, hey, what are you doing? And then we started speaking to them. Like, I'm like wiping my tears, like, we're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they're like, well, do you teach things? It was so crazy. Like every time I tell this story, it's like, it just like feels like it didn't actually happen. But they asked us, like, can you teach us something right now? It's the only time that happened in my mission that somebody asked me, like came up to me and asked me to teach them. And it was like 10 minutes after this crazy experience with the American guy. And so going into that lesson, I was like going through the first lesson, restoration, talking about Joseph Smith, and the contrast of the moment that I had just had, where somebody's attacking the prophet and somebody who I had really revered my whole life. And now I was like, why is he saying these things? And then this moment of, now I'm telling somebody about this man. It was just really powerful to me. It was like a big point for me, where I was like, oh, as I was saying it, I'm like, oh, I believe this. Like, I know this. Like, this is really important to me. And so much of the good in my life has come because of Joseph Smith. And I was able to like share that and be like so real, and none of it was just like this habit, this what I do every day. It was like I was looking at teaching in a new perspective, and I ended up being grateful for that experience, that as wild as it was, that somebody's attacking me and my religious beliefs, that I was able to come out of that and be like, no, I believe this, and this is real for me, and I love it, So I never knew what happened with those 3 people. I never saw them again. It was just really good timing. not a coincidence, It was a direct answer to prayer. So I thought that was one of the wildest experiences that I had.
Thank you for sharing that. That's actually a great segue into the next topic, which is spiritual story. One of your favorites.
Yeah. Man, this one was really hard to choose. Obviously, you're in it every single day, teaching and feeling it. And as I was thinking about this, I was going through old journal entries and old letters home, and there's a common theme through a lot of my experiences on my mission. And a lot of that was like finding people, like answers to prayers, and finding people was like a very, very big part of my mission. And so this one story specifically is about this woman named Brenda. I was in this cemetery. There's this walkway, there's this path that goes directly through a cemetery to go to like this little town area. And we walked through it every day. We were walking through it, one day around sunset, and we saw a woman with her son visiting a grave. And so, at first I was like, oh, should we talk to them? They're having like this personal moment. But I felt really, really strongly to just quietly go over to them and say hi. And she was talking about how she was visiting her son who died like 2 years prior. And, it obviously was an amazing chance for us to share our beliefs on the plan of salvation and the chance that she would get to see her son again. And when we said that, it was like she had never thought of that or heard that before, and her eyes just lit up and just was, her eyes were glistening just with tears, and she was like, do you really think that I'll see him again? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. There's life after this life, life continues. And we sat there in the cemetery. She was like sitting on the ground. We sat down next to her and we sang Families Can Be Together Forever. And it was really a sweet moment to just the scene. I picture it so vividly under the sunset, and we're telling this woman the most hopeful message that she could hear in that moment. And we were like, can we tell you more about this another time? And she was like, please. I don't think she gave us clear directions on where she lives, because there aren't like solid addresses in the Philippines. They're just like, yeah, go, you'll find the coconut grove, and then you'll go, you'll pass the big rock and you'll turn right, and that's like their address, and at least in the country places. So we made an appointment to go see her, and she was just pointed in that direction. And I couldn't stop thinking about her after that experience, and we went back and we go up the path to where she was pointing, and we couldn't find her anywhere. There was no clear way of where she could have lived, It was just middle of nowhere, just mountain, grass. There were cows, there were trees, and we prayed, right there in the middle of this coconut grove, and all of a sudden this man, again, people just coming out of nowhere at the perfect time. This man came up to us, just shook our hand, and he didn't say anything, but he just led us down this other path that we didn't see, we didn't know about. And we come over this hill, and it's crazy. I remember it so vividly. And we just see this one house in the middle, in this clearing in the in the jungle. And we go up, and then he goes behind the house. We don't see him. We knock on the door, and it's Brenda. It's the woman that we met in the cemetery. And she just looked so surprised and so happy to see us. I've been waiting, and apparently that man had been her dad, and he was just out in the field, and he had heard about the missionaries talking to his daughter, and so he knew that we were looking for her. And it went on to have such an amazing experience with her as well. I don't think she joined the church, but just to communicate a message so hopeful to someone was really, really beautiful for me to see. To see her grow closer to God, and to hear about the possibility of eternal families because of Christ, and that was really powerful for me. And I think about that experience so much when I think about prayer, and I just that was an experience that really taught me that it's the heavens are open, there's really open communication available all the time, especially when there's somebody in need, and you can be his hands, so that was one of my favorite spiritual stories from our mission. Brenda,
thank you for sharing that. The last section is testimony, and if you want to do it in your language that you spoke in your mission.
Sige, pwede kayo. Grabe, dugay na kayo, wala ko nakasulti og Bisaya, so pasaylo ko. Nasayod ko nga tinuod ni nasayod jud ko nga buhi si Hesus Kristo kay nabati na ko sa akong kasing-kasing sa akong lawas ba. Pinaagi sa akong mga kasinatian sa pagbasa sa mga kasulatan sa pagampo sa akong amahan sa langit. Nadawan ako ang tubag na tinuod ebanghelyo, tinuod ang simbahan ni Hesus Kristo. O mapasalamaton kay ko nga gihatagan ko og oportunidad nga moadto sa Pilipinas, magpaambit sa ebanghelyo niya ug unta makapadayon ko kanunay sa ako ang pagpamatuod sa ako ang pagpalambo sa ebanghelyo ug sa ako ang hugo nga pagtuo. Nasayod ko nga tinuod nga propeta si Joseph Smith o tungod niya gipahiuli ang ebanghelyo, ang organization diri sa kalibutan karon ug napanalanginan kaayo ang ako ang pamilya. So kana mapasalamaton kay ko, ibilin ako na sa ngalan ni Hesus Kristo. Amen.
Amen.